Welcome, Week 7, Coleman's 2015 Certified SBA 7A Loan Closing. Lance, we're almost done.
They've made it through 7 weeks, Bob, and just one more to go. I know they're excited and ready to be certified SBA loan closers.
I'm impressed by this group. We have almost 50% participation with office hours, so good for you, and we appreciate the questions, and we appreciate playing Stump the Instructor. Let's, you know how to ask questions. There's the way to do it there. Send an email. You can do it through the chat interface. Are we still ready to? Are we going to try to have a live question yet, Joseph? If you want to be brave and be the first for a live question, raise your hand, and Joseph will figure out how to patch you in. Poll questions. Number 1. How often do your CRE appraisals come in at less than 90% of the value proposed in the SBA loan application? 3 options.
I just have some curiosity on this one, Bob, because appraisals have changed so much over the last 7 to 10 years. They used to be incredibly aggressive, then they got incredibly conservative, and I just wondered what the pulse was right now.
86% say 25% less than the time, 20% say never, and now 6% say more than 25% of the time. So that's not too bad.
Absolutely.
That's not too bad. Question number 2. Do you set up escrow accounts for taxes and insurance on your SBA commercial real estate loans?
Well, and the reason I ask this question, Bob, is so many lenders that have been involved for an extended period of time, you used to not be able to have an escrow account or an SBA loan, and that's a recent change. So I just wondered how many are actually doing that. And I think it's a best lending or a best practice.
71% say no, 29% say yes. So 3 out of 10.
Not surprised.
And just to reiterate, you think that should be a best practice, correct?
Well, I believe that it certainly provides some protection as you go throughout the life of the loan to make sure you've got insurance coverage and that your taxes are being paid. There's always a source to take care of that, and in regular servicing, those are 2 of the key issues.
How often do you have a change in the use of proceeds after SBA approval and before the final disbursement? Never. Quarter of the time or less, or more than a quarter of the time.
You know, one of the things, Bob, that I try to emphasize in this training is when you submit an application, make sure the information is as accurate as possible. Now, having a change in use of proceeds, it certainly isn't an indication that the person working on closing the loan has done something wrong. But I was just curious how often it occurred. I know at the Little Rock Commercial Loan Servicing Center when I was deputy director, this was probably the most common loan authorization change request.
Absolutely. 5% of you have never had that issue. 63% have had it 25% of the time or less, and whopping 1/3 have had it more than 25% of the time.
Not surprised at all.
Is that a problem with?
It's not really a problem from SBA.
That's what it is.
It's not really a problem from SBA's perspective, Bob. It's just critically important that you get that, if it's before the final disbursement, that you get that change request sent to the processing center and approved by SBA.
I guess the question is that a problem? Is that a systematic problem with the organization, with the bank or the lender, to have that many change requests? Is it something that
I don't really think so, Bob, because in my experience building 3 SBA lending departments, I can't tell you how many times a borrower came back and said, hey, that $200,000 piece of equipment, they've offered us a discount if we can pay them by this date, and it's a 25% discount or whatever it might be. Or, there's a construction project, and it may have cost overruns, and you have to increase the loan. There's certainly a change in use of proceeds. So I don't think it's an indication at all in the quality of the bank's SBA lending effort But one thing that I would want you to take away from this question is if you have a change in use of proceeds and it occurs between the approval and the final disbursement, you need to make sure and get that approved by SBA.
Very good. You told us the one takeaway, do escrow accounts. What else? What is the main takeaway you want people to remember 2-3 months down the line?
Well, I think just understanding refinancing, we talked a little bit about this last week, Bob. Understanding how to use refinancing, understanding what qualifies for refinancing. I think it's a hidden opportunity in most banks' commercial lending portfolio, loans that have balloon features, loans that may be amortized, maybe a CRE loan that's amortized on 7 years and you can offer them a better payment structure with an SBA loan. But I think understanding the requirements for refinancing are important because it's a great way to find opportunity for your bank.
Great, great. Email question number 1. We have an SBA loan that was approved for $350,000. We have made the final disbursement and realized there was a change of use of proceeds that needs to be corrected. How can we take care of this to protect the guarantee?
Okay, this is one of those situations that occurs more often than most people would like to admit. They disperse the loan, they make the final disbursement, they go back and take a look at the authorization and they realize that they had a change in the use of proceeds. Final disbursements occurred, Bob, so you don't have to submit it to the Guarantee Processing Center, and fortunately the unilateral authority matrix allows you to make that change. But it's important at this point to document it with a good descriptive servicing memorandum and attaching a copy of that unilateral matrix to prove that you can do it.
So you want something more than, hey, our numbers don't add up, here are the new numbers.
I think if you have one that is, I don't want to call it a mistake, Bob, but that's what this would be, a mistake that probably should have been approved. You definitely want to give a good, thorough explanation. I don't think I would start out by saying we made a mistake. I would start out by saying there was a change in use of proceeds that was not realized until after the final disbursement.
That's legitimate. Yeah, yeah.
And then describe it, and again, it's unilateral. It doesn't require SBA's approval or acknowledgement. Slap a copy of the unilateral authority matrix on it, and you're in good shape. Email
question number 2. We are a SBA 7A and Express lender. We funded a $400,000 loan for the acquisition of FFE, furniture, fixtures, equipment, on a new business and realize that they do not have enough working capital. What do you recommend as the best solution to this problem?
I think they helped me answer the question with the first sentence, Bob. First of all, when you're making a loan to a new business, make sure there's a working capital component in there. They're going to need it. They may say they don't. And it's real common for entrepreneurs to say, I don't need that. I think it's important for you to make sure they have a working capital component. In this case, they've made the loan. It's done. And because they're an express lender, Bob, my solution would be determine how much working capital the borrower needs and do an SBA express loan for them on the working capital.
You have some other tools in your toolbox. One is you can go right to possible payment deferrals, things like that. I'd be very careful about that because that simply extends the time frame for an early default loan as defined by the Inspector General. But you're right, and I think, but with that express loan, be very careful in terms of documenting. You want to make sure if the whole thing goes down in a year that you were prudent in making that side loan, correct?
Yeah, and I think you absolutely want to be prudent. In this case, I probably would collateralize it with a second on that FF&E. But I think the express lending program is the way to get the working capital of this small business borrower that they need.
Question number 3. I guess there's a number of questions here. Can SBA disbursements be done in wire or ACH? If so, is there any added documentation to track the disbursement?
Absolutely, a disbursement can be done by wire or ACH. You just want a copy of that transaction with the associated invoice or receipt that matches up with that disbursement. So absolutely.
In the video, you mentioned that SBA funds cannot be used to pay delinquent taxes. But House slides say that the borrower is on a payment plan with the IRS, then SBA funds can be used to pay delinquent taxes. It's a bit confusing. How is that fair? What's the real storylines?
Well, and I went back and looked at the slides, saw this question about 15, 20 minutes before we came on. And that is true. You can use SBA loan funds on a payment plan, but technically when the small business engages the IRS and comes up with a payment plan, they're not technically delinquent taxes. They are, but they're not. SBA just does not want you reaching out and funding the payment of taxes that are delinquent without an IRS-approved payment plan.
Is it prudent to pay off taxes on an IRS payment plan?
I've got to be honest with you, Bob. This one is one that I might leave alone.
That's why I asked you.
And I just want to share with people a lot of my perspective on closing and underwriting SBA loans comes from having done in excess of 500 purchase packages in my career. I know where the hot spots are when you're trying to get paid on the guarantee, and I start sweating and feeling uncomfortable when I see anybody's dispersed funds to pay anything related to taxes. So
fair enough.
this is probably one that I would avoid, although SBA will allow some funds to go toward a payment plan. I just don't, as a best practice, I wouldn't do it.
And as we've said many times, just because SBA sets that bar doesn't mean you have to lower yourself to that level. You can choose to have a higher standard, and that's certainly nothing wrong with saying, nope, we're not going to do it, guys.
That's exactly right, Bobby. It goes back to prudent lending standards, which we talked about in the very first week of this program. You want to do what's prudent. Would you do that on a commercial loan of a similar size, non-SBA guaranteed? Probably not. So don't do it on the SBA loan.
I had a loan originally approved for $150,000, and then we increased it to $200,000 a few months later without the first disbursement. The guarantee fee was due in 30 days after the increase was approved. Is this common? Why didn't my borrower have a 90-day period?
The guarantee fee, whether it be for the initial approval or an increase, is always due 30 days after the event. So it's a standard practice for SBA. Once the loan's approved, you've got 30 days to pay the guarantee fee. Additionally, well, actually, no, once it's approved, you have 90 days, but it's increases where you only have 30 days to pay. But on any increase after the loan's been approved, the initial guarantee fee's been paid, it's a 30-day window that you have to pay the fee on that increase. And quite frankly, Bob, SBA typically will not approve the increase unless you can provide proof that the guarantee fee's been paid.
So the answer is because SBA says so.
Yes, Bob, that's the long and short of it. 30 days after an increase, because that's what SBA says.
This question just came in, thank you. You mentioned in this week's training that we can cancel a loan once it has been dispersed. How might we go about this?
Loan cancellation, you're going to send a request to the appropriate servicing center, whether it be Fresno or Little Rock. But one thing I want to clarify, the guarantee fee. We were talking about guarantee fee just a second ago. If the loan has had 4 cents dispersed, you're not going to get a refund on your guarantee fee. If there has not been a disbursement, you will get a refund on your guarantee fee. But the cancellation of that loan, I'm sorry, I said go to your servicing center. You can do that in E-Tran also, Bob.
Great.
But on a loan that's already been dispersed, I probably would go ahead and submit that to the servicing center just to get acknowledgement.
Week 8. What do we have coming up for week 8, Lance?
Week 8 is a fun week. We're going to cover some miscellaneous topics. One, I'm going to present what I consider one of my favorite ways to set up a loan file. in your SBA lending, I always encourage people to have a origination file, a closing file, and a servicing file, but I'm going to share with you the way that I would recommend setting up that closing file. The other thing we're going to talk about is file review. I think file review is a critically important process in SBA lending. We'll talk about when you should do file reviews, and I'm going to present that SBA risk-based review form. Also talk about early defaults. Early defaults seem to be, I mean, the purchase package that I did and submitted today, Bob, was on an early default. And an early default loan, what you guys that are doing the closing, the quality of your work makes getting paid on an early default loan, it increases your propensity to get paid immensely. So it's important to understand the early default and the key areas that SBA look at, i.e. the 4506Ts, transcripts, reconciliation, making sure use of proceeds matches up with the authorization. If they don't, having an authorization change request and file to support that. But understanding the early default loan as a closer, you're doing an incredibly great service for your bank, because that's going to make getting paid on the guarantee easier.
Great. Just wanted to shout out to our friends in Alaska. You're all over the country today: California, Colorado, Southern California, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Wisconsin is here, Oklahoma. Anyway, thank you all for joining us. I appreciate that very much. But before we go, let's talk about the final exam. How's that going to work? How does the plaque, do we have a plaque, Joseph? How is that going to work? And tell us how we're going to end up.
Bob, there's 820, oh, I'm sorry, not really. There's only, there's 50 multiple choice questions. The final exam has the same philosophy that all my tests do. They're not intended to trick you or make you miss an answer. You're going to have access to all your presentations and all your materials, and the questions are just intended to reinforce what we've covered. So I fully expect all of you, except for the occasions, Bob, and many have found examples of questions that maybe when I was doing the test answer sheet, I didn't get them all done properly. But I would just state that it's intended to reinforce your information that you've studied. You guys should all easily make 90%.
And I want to make clear, you are welcome after you're finished. You're welcome to come back and access the videos at any time to reinforce something, or something that, for example, that has come up. You can do that. Joseph, how long will they be online for?
At least a year.
Yeah, at least a year. And if for some reason, just email me or Joseph. If for some reason you can't access it, we'll get that to you. Lance has also always been very gracious to answer questions. So feel free to email him as well. And just want you to know, even though the course ends next week, we're more than willing to extend the courtesy to you of getting your questions answered.
Hi, Bob. I just want to make, this group has been one of the best certification series groups. Great questions, great participation. I've really enjoyed this group a lot.
Speaking of questions, we have another one coming in. When use of proceeds for leasehold improvements, of course we must obtain the lien on the fixtures and improvements. We understand that. But the SOP says we also have to obtain the assignment of a lease. Why do we have to do that? What does that mean?
Well, the assignment of lease helps to secure those leasehold improvements. And the reason for that, if there is a liquidation, you don't really have anything to liquidate unless you have the assignment of lease. Typically on an SBA loan, if you have a 7-year maturity, you've got to have a lease that's either a 7-year lease or has the right to be renewed through 7 years. So there would be an asset to liquidate. Now, if you did leasehold improvements without the assignment of lease, you have zero. So the reason for that is to help in a liquidation process, to help have something to actually liquidate in that circumstance.
Yeah. And again, you may choose not to exercise the assignment, but you have it in your toolbox.
Absolutely.
Very good. Are we, any other questions?
Just last question.
Oh, one more last question. Go ahead.
Take the test on Monday. The answer is no.
No, the test will be on, the question was, do we have to take the test on Monday? The answer is no. You can take the test whenever you want. You can take it after you view the videos. You can take it a month from now. That's fine. And we will automatically, Joseph, how are we doing that? Do they have to send us their physical address, or how do we capture that?
Send the shipping address.
The best way to do that is after you complete the test, just send an email to joseph@colemanreport.com and indicate where you want the plaque shipped. That's the best way to do that. If not, we will be contacting you, but it saves a step. And we will get those out. Give us a couple of weeks to get those out to you, but we will get those out. And as I showed you, they're very nice from that standpoint. We will have office hours next Friday to wrap up. And with that, are we clear? We have one more question. I love them. What is the difference between an assignment of lease and a landlord's release?
Oh, that is an excellent question. You know, I put this out to the group. Can you tell me?
Is this a stump the instructor and we're going to hold this over till next week? Is that what the answer is?
Well, the assignment of lease and landlord release are similar in nature. They're intended to do the same thing. The landlord release holds less value in a court than the assignment of lease does. Frequently, the authorization will come back with both required. But in my preference, as somebody that gets involved not only with origination and closing, but a lot with liquidation, I want the assignment.
Very good. And with that, everyone have a nice weekend, and we will talk to you all on Friday.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
I just want to clarify, you can take the test. We're going to be uploading them on Tuesday?
Yes.
Yeah, you can take it as soon as, you can take the test as soon as you want also. So, very good. And we'll see you on Friday. Thanks a lot.
Have a good weekend.